right. So this first sentence that says some judges complain about statutes that specifically mandatory minimum sentence for that specify mandatory minimum sentences for criminal offenses. So what does some mean?
50% or more.
Nope. Some is at least one.
Oh, sorry.
You're right. You're right. Most is 50%
Most,
or more.
yes.
Yep. 50 is like, or MO, most, more than 50%. So some, at least one judge complained about the statutes that specify mandatory minimums. So that's saying that at least one judge says that complains that there is a minimum sentence for certain crimes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the second sentence, these legal restrictions, they complain. Who is they referring to?
There's some judges.
Yep. These legal restrictions, the judges complain, are too mechanical and prevent judges from deciding when a given individual can or cannot be rehabilitated. So this first sentence that I have in pink, what part of the argument is that?
That's that's an opinion.
Yep, opinion of others, right? Because that's the opinion of these judges, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what is the purple sentence?
That's just that's background information.
Yeah, I would say it's like background information / opinion of others.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Like these words that I use for the premises are not cut and dry of like, oh, it's not like they fit into like a hard and fast category. It's just helpful to kind of know what the goal of them is.
Okay.
All right, then this next sentence we have, but that is precisely why mandatory minimum sentences are necessary. What is that referring to?
The prevent the legal restrictions, but that is necessary. The legal restrictions complain to make mandatory minimum sentences.
No, so but that is precisely why. So this is referring to. So we're saying that the sentence before is saying that judges complaining that these legal restrictions prevent judges from being able to tell if someone can be rehabilitated or not. Mm-hmm. So preventing judges from being able to decide whether a given individual can be rehabilitated or not, that's what that is referring to. Okay. So we put that in there, but preventing judges from deciding when a given individual can or cannot be rehabilitated is precisely why mandatory minimum sentences are necessary. What's another word for necessary? What's synonymous to necessary?
Must, like
I use the word requires or required because that's common on the LSAT.
Okay.
History amply demonstrates that when they invariably believe themselves to act wise when in fact they are arbitrary and irrational. What part of the argument is that sentence?
History amply demonstrates that when people are free to use their own judgment, they invariably believe themselves to act wisely, when in fact they are often arbitrary and irrational. That is, I would say, a subsidiary conclusion. History amply demonstrates that when people are free to use their own judgment, it's also any factor of thing. That, I mean, there's still kind of like opinion.
I would say it's like background information / an example, because we're saying that history shows this.
Oh, history, when history, like when it says history, it's an example. Like it's
like history shows us that when people can use their own judgment, they are actually like not, they're often arbitrary and irrational. And then our last sentence, there is no reason to think that judges are an exception to this rule. What part of the argument is that?
Well, that's the one I picked for main conclusion.
Okay, so why did you decide? There's two sentences that I think could potentially be the main conclusion. One is that, but that is precisely why mandatory minimum sentences are necessary. And the second one is the last sentence. One is a subsidiary conclusion and one is a main conclusion. Which
that is are necessary. Well, because there is no reason to think that history implies demonstrates that when people are free to use their own judgment, they believe themselves to have in fact they're acting arbitrarily. It kind of, I would say that it supports that judges are not an exception to the rule.
Okay, so it's actually the opposite. We are trying, what we're trying to argue for is this is the fact that judges, the fact that we need to prevent judges from deciding when a given individual can or cannot be rehabilitated is precisely why mandatory minimum sentences are necessary. I want to know why does that matter? Why is this necessary? Well, we use that example here to support that there's no reason. But then in turn, we use that since the judges are not an exception to this rule, that supports this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why that middle sentence is going to be our main conclusion.
Oh.
All right, so go ahead and try to answer this question.
Necessary. Okay, which one was it?
Absolutely. We're going to go with E because even though it's a little bit backwards, it's saying mandatory minimum sentences are needed to help prevent judicial arbitrariness. And that's what we say. But that is precisely why mandatory minimum sentences are necessary. Mm-hmm. And what are we referring to? That example before. Fabulous. Look at you.